clarifications. Associate Professor James Lim. Sorry. Oh, Minister Chan, are you speaking first? No, Associate Professor James Lim.
Okay.
Iron Man comes later.
Thank you, Chair. So, just a clarification for Mr. Chan. I accept the Minister's arguments that the PSLE could, in fact, offer an important checkpoint and allow parental choice with regard to secondary school entry. But I wonder if he would not also agree that allowing a parent to choose for their child not to take the PSLE is yet another dimension of choice. If so, then what are the inhibitions behind, and I'll emphasize this word, optional through-train policy as the Workers' Party has proposed? Does it have to do with resource constraints, such as a belief that it's not possible to create such through-train schools, or is it more with a perceived lack of demand, as he may have alluded to? If it is the latter, what then would be the hurdles to piloting this for just a small number of schools to gauge take-up?
Mr. Chair, thank Member James Lim for allowing me to elaborate on this. We have no philosophical difficulty considering that. But let's just walk through the process. And we have thought about this. Should we pilot a few schools for through train? So let me walk through the process and some of the things that we have to step through in order for us to consider this. First, who gets to go to the through train program? Who gets to go through the through train program? At P1, I think most of us as parents will know, at P1, it's very difficult, if not impossible, for us to know the abilities and interests of our children. If the through train program is to a very popular school, and you know which one I'm talking about, I'm sure there's no shortage of takers for this through train program. But what about those who develop a bit later and want the chance to go to some of these schools? Does it mean, therefore, they don't get a chance to go to these schools? And how does that affect the social mixing that we spoke so much about in this house? So we have to step through this. Who gets to go through a through train program? Second issue. Supposing as a parent, I decided that my child will go through a through train program. Somewhere in the primary school, I figure out that my child may not be suitable for this program. Then what do I do? Third issue. If we have no checkpoint at P6 or any other years, you can argue whether it's P6 or any. If you have no checkpoint at all, then how do we help our students to get into the correct educational setting? Which then might consequently mean the fourth issue, which is that in a secondary school, every secondary school which is in the through train program must be able to cater to that diversity of learners. Which then comes to the fifth issue. How do we resource these schools with a complete suite of programs for the students that we have taken in at P1 with the promise that regardless of their abilities, after they have manifested it in the various years, that we will be able to provide them with the full pathways. So don't get me wrong, we are not ideologically close to all good ideas. But we have to step through this. We have to step through this. I have also spoke with my foreign counterparts, who some of them have some segments of their system with this through train program. And the experience have not been uniformly positive for the reasons that I mentioned. So I would say this, we have considered this, and we are still considering this, and we have to step through the issues, non-trivial issues, systematically. So I repeat what I mentioned in my speech. Many have said to remove the PSLE, but let's get the reasons right why we want to consider removing the PSLE. Let's not do it for the wrong reasons, and let's not end up with unintended consequences.
Mr. Darrow David.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of clarifications. First of all, regarding FSBB, or full subject-based banding, it's heartening to hear Minister Maliki mention that students will have multiple options to take, especially in the polytechnics from FSBB. But I actually have a question which is a different side of the same coin. Conversely, will some students perhaps be restricted in their options after they finish secondary school? So, for example, if I had taken chemistry or maths before and I just managed to pass, then I could maybe take it still in junior college. With FSBB, if I took chemistry or maths at a G1 level, would I still be allowed to take it, or would it be because I did not take it at a higher level, therefore pathways are restricted for me if I did not take a subject at a sufficiently high enough level at G2 or G3. Next clarification is regarding EdTech. I think Minister Chan mentioned that it's good that we can access SLS anytime, anywhere. As a parent of a child in primary 6, I must say that it's a very, very useful system indeed. But while we can access it anytime, anywhere, Minister, what about those students who may not have the device to actually access it? So I would like to ask, perhaps, with a wonderful tool like SLS, it'd be a pity if some of our students did not have the device to access it. Are there schemes or plans, say, to ensure that students have the device, whether it's a tablet, a mobile, or even a laptop, to ensure they can fully reap the rich benefits of a system like SLS? Thank you, Chair.
I thank Mr. Darrell David for his question. On FSBB, first, I think we want to ensure that we understand, and parents understand, the concept, philosophy behind FSBB is really to recognize the potential of every student with regards to different subjects. Traditionally, we assume that you do all the subject in the same level. That's where the streaming came in, right? The express, the normal CAT, and normal technical. But we acknowledge also that over the years, we want to facilitate students' ability to focus on subjects that they are strong in and do subjects that they may not be strong in but capable of coping with. And so when we look at the post-secondary pathways, it's really to recognize that. And how do we find that combination? So today, for most polytechnics, the current criteria is equivalent to the express stream, where it is the 5 G3 dominant combination, for example. As I mentioned in my speech earlier, we are considering allowing usage of the G2 subject. So the question is, when you are doing G1 today, and where do you go afterwards? So essential in the full FSBB program is what we call the education and career guidance. Career guidance by the teachers to help the students at each level. So Sec 1, when you come in after PSLE, you're guided in terms of your performance at PSLE, and looking at your strength in each subject. The school, the teachers will guide the students on what they can and should take when they get into secondary 1. And then by the time they get to secondary 3, they prepare for the major exam. Then they look at the performance again. What we want to ensure is whether you do a G1, G2, or G3 subject combination, there will be a pathway for you. Whether it is through our ITE, where, as I announced also, we now have the 3-year higher NATEC curriculum that they can aspire towards. And if that continues, then they can aspire towards joining the Polytechnic afterwards, or joining our technical diploma program, our work study program. So there are expanded pathways, and this allows them to feel that they are not kind of like pigeonholed at such an early age. And that's been the feedback from many members of the House, that we should not pigeonhole our students too early and allow them to explore their own potential. And I hope that that flexibility allows the students to also feel good that the system, the revision of the education system is really meant for them to grow and appreciate their own strengths.
Chair, short answer, no worries. All our secondary school students have their personal learning devices. Any primary school students who require a device because of their family circumstances can approach the school for help.
Kerry Tan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to empathize with Minister Chan and Minister Maliki and everybody in MOE for trying to address all our needs with very competing and difficult constraints in resources. But I'd like to first clarify that in my proposal for naturalistic pedagogy, it is not so much of asking MOE to do more, but an invitation to MOE to consider how else might we. So I would like to ask Minister whether MOE might be open to make a pathway of teacher training in naturalistic pedagogy possible for new cohorts of teacher applicants at NIE to explore this pathway. That's my first question. And the second question is related to I heard Minister's encouragement to our companies and private sector to constantly, we're constantly encouraging private sector to hire based on skills and not qualifications. May I know if we have any kind of research or survey with employers to understand the reasons why they continue to keep up with the current hiring practices, despite our many messages encouraging them to look more at a skill-based hiring than qualification-based hiring. Thank you.
Chair, we thank Ms. Kerry Tan for your suggestions. We understand the spirit of what you are asking. Whether naturalist pedagogy will be in the mainstream pathways, I will have to leave it to my professional colleagues in NIE to make the judgment. But we are always open to explore all different pedagogies, whether to adapt and adopt them in part or in full to benefit our students. A second question is on technically, I shouldn't be answering this because you asked, why is the industry not recruiting people based on currency rather than grades? Well, as the former MTI minister, maybe let me hazard a reply. I think all of us are human beings, including HR professionals, people who are doing hiring. We sometimes fall into the habit to try to reduce everything to something that we can manage. So in the past, maybe we are all very comfortable with reducing the perception of ability to a single unitary dimension, which is called either the GPA or the grades. But having said that, as the former minister MTI, I have seen many progressive companies that have actually gone beyond this. And I've always encouraged my teachers to go and visit some of these companies, understand their HR processes. In fact, last year during the MOE's annual work plan, I asked all my teachers this question. Do they know what will be the first question that the potential employer will ask our student? Do they know what will be the first question? And to be fair, not all my teachers will be familiar with this because they are not in this business. So I encourage them, talk to the employers, and also encourage the employers to come and talk to the schools to understand, to help our students understand the kind of abilities and capabilities required for the future. Now, the second thing that I think we can do to help us evolve faster in our mindset is this. We would like to invite all the industry leaders to come into our schools to see our students, be it IT, poly, or even secondary school. Talk to them, inspire them, share with them what kind of skill sets required, and at the same time, see what our students are capable of. So I will give an example. Today, the IT industry is very hot. It's perpetually short of manpower. But today, many of the IT industry firms want to ask for graduate degree or IT-related graduate degree. So we suggested to them, why don't you come and look at the polytechnic students and look at even the ITE students. They can do certain jobs with their skill sets. And in fact, some other countries just overnight call their polytechnics colleges and award the degrees. Our polytechnic students are not any worse off compared to many of them. So go beyond the title of a diploma or a degree and look at the actual skill sets. And when the industry people come in and join us on the boards of the schools or the IT and the polytechnics, and whatever they feel that we are not doing adequately, give us the feedback, we adjust the curriculum, and we will have a faster speed to market timing to help the industry fulfill their manpowers, at the same time allowing our graduates from our polytechnics, IT, and universities to be much more industry ready. So I think we need to work hand in hand, but we need to get beyond this mindset that and reduce all the abilities of the individual to one matrix. And the last appeal that I have when I speak to all my industry partners is this. MOE will never be able to produce the perfect student and perfect worker for you with all the requisite skills. Because it doesn't exist. As the MOE students join you to become the workers in the industry, it is also the responsibilities of the industry to keep training our students and keep them up to date. Otherwise, there's no way that we can produce that perfect students that meet all the industry needs forever. In fact, I did a thought experiment with a group of entrepreneurs whom I met. I said, why don't you tell me all the skill sets that you want from our students? So they gave me a long list of all the skill sets that they desire. So I said, very good. As a former MTI minister, why don't I make you a deal? I will produce the students with all these attributes in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, and you sign me a contract that you will employ them when they graduate. None of them took up my offer. Because they realized that whatever they say today will be outdated by then. And in MOE, we are in the lifelong education business. We cannot produce people overnight with skill sets. But it does require partnership for us to keep ourselves updated in our curriculum so that we have a faster speed to market. But it does require us to also work with the industry to keep training our workers so that they remain current, even after they join the industry. And to Ms. Denise Phua answer question, today, if you look at the PIA score, at the school and school level, once they depart school, we are at the top of the league. And we want to make sure that we are still top of the league as they grow older. Today, we are not top of the league for the older age groups because our education system started a bit behind other more established economies. But we have every aim to make sure that the skills of our adult workers remain the top of their league in their respective age groups. And this is why our definition of success cannot be the first 15 years of what our children achieve in school, but the next 50 years of what our workers achieve beyond school.
Ms. Fumiha.
Thank you, Chair. I have two clarifications for MOS, Gan. It's related to the speech I made. So the first clarification is MOS actually responded to my call that from the vast group of Skills Future training providers, it's time for the government to streamline into 3 categories. And I think you actually, indeed, that is the plan. Could MOS elaborate the criteria that MOE will be using to streamline the whole 790 training providers, which I counted online? The second recommendation I gave to MOS is about the idea of appointing lead training providers for each of the key sectors along industry transformation map. A little bit about the idea like anchor operators in the childcare sector, right? So, you work closely, they are selected by the industry, and I think most importantly, they must be set up to do practice-based training, not academic, but to reskill people with practice-based curriculum using real-life simulation. People who teach us on those programs are industry leaders, so that the skills are really practice-based. So if MOS can comment on that.
Well, thank you, Ms. Fumiha, for that question. Actually, before I answer that question, I just would like to add to what Minister Chan said in response to Ms. Kerry Tan's questions about why there seems to be companies who are hiring based on qualification instead of skills, despite it being common sense that actually it's more sensible, logical for employers and HR to hire people based on skills. What in my interactions with companies as well as with our training providers, I understand that some of our companies, especially the smaller ones, they may themselves not be very clear about the definition of skills. Indeed, it is a science, there's this language, around how skills should be defined. And that's why SSG, for some time, has been developing skills frameworks. Skills frameworks that apply to different sectors. I think there are altogether 34 now for different industries. And it's very useful for companies that need help in identifying the skills for the different job roles in their companies to refer to the skills frameworks. This will help them in better defining and hiring people based on their need and not overhire. For example, it's quite common, I hear from WSG sometimes in job advertisements, companies put out, they want to hire an undergraduate in ICT. But actually, could they have considered a diploma graduate in ICT? How familiar are they about the differences in the skills that our university students and our poly students have in terms of ICT? I think there is also responsibility on MOE's part to help employers out there understand the differentiation, and we will do better in this. We also hope that through work-study programs, apprenticeships, employers will be able to better understand and see for themselves, experience for themselves the quality of our students, whether they are from ITE, polytechnic, or universities, and not just blindly assume that they are of certain differences in standards based on qualification alone. Now, coming to Ms. Fumiha's questions on the criteria for streamlining training providers, it is quite challenging indeed, because every training provider tells us they're very good, right, in the courses that they are providing. So what we do really is we look at the employment outcomes, whether people who attend their courses get a job within a certain number of months after course completion, whether the training provider is able to connect the trainees or the course participants with potential hirers, companies out there, so that the chances and the networking opportunities for the trainees would be much better. We also look at employment outcomes for people who are already being hired, already have a job, but by going through the training, they are able to qualify for a higher job role. That would be helpful. That we deem to be a tangible employment outcome. So those companies and those training providers that provide such courses, we will want to provide more funding support, basically to lower the cost of these courses and also to steer more trainees into these courses provided by such training providers. But we also know that it's not always so easy for a person to get a promotion straight after attending a course or to land a job immediately after completing a program, right? Sometimes it takes multiple steps before a person can land a job or get a promotion. So we do track this over time, and we look to our industry partners, trade associations, and looking forward to NTUC, the unions as well, that commit a lot of their resources and the union workers for training to give us the feedback so that SSG and the government can, through multiple sources of information, be able to better identify training providers and causes that can make impact on the workers. On
the other question, you mentioned anchor operator. Yesterday, Ms. Fumiha also brought up the concept of a lead training provider, I believe. That is a useful concept. We are open to it. In fact, we have CET centers, continuing education and training centers. I think there are about 20 of them now. These are what I would deem to be equivalent or similar to the concept that Ms. Fumiha is referring to. And we have them in retail, in tourism, hospitality, and so on. And they are the ones that we deem to have reached certain high level of standard in training and generation of workers for the industry. And many of them are actually industry leaders themselves, not necessarily training providers, pure training providers or IHLs. We cast our net quite wide. We do look for training providers that are strong in producing trainees of good outcomes. Thank you.
Just as I ask our MPs to keep their clarifications short, I think to be fair, sometimes if the response could be also a little bit shorter, would be good. Mr. Louis Chua, the actual one.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, just got two quick clarifications for Minister Chan in relation to the P1 registration framework, and I fully agree with Minister's view that we need to change mindsets here. And so, in terms of the first clarification, in terms of the societal circumstances and needs which Minister spoke about before making further changes, if you can elaborate further on what these are. And second, in relation to that, I understand that alumni ties and community ties, I mean, not meant to be literal, are important to parents. But at the same time, could we not then look at the homeschool distance as the primary factor while still keeping some of these other ties in relation to the secondary criteria to send the right signal that perhaps distance and convenience for the children will be the most important factor? Thank you.
Chair, let me explain what I mean by societal considerations to answer both of the clarifications by Mr. Louis Chua. First, you see, when the country was young, community-based groups, alumni, they all play an important part, and they still do, in helping to foster the sense of community and spirit. But as societies matures, there's always a risk that such groups becomes closed groups and exclusive groups. That's why over time, we must find that balance. And that's what I mean by societal circumstances. This happens in Singapore. It happens everywhere across the world. So if we accept that there is a role, a need for some local community, we also accept that homeschool distance is important for the convenience of the students and the parents. Then once we accept that there are these two, sometimes competing considerations, then our job is to find that balance. And we must be prepared to adjust the balance according to circumstances and the societal needs. Now, will just using homeschool distance alone solve this problem? I don't think it will. In fact, if we only use homeschool distance alone, then we may have another unintended consequence, which has happened in Singapore and elsewhere. And this is what happens is that the so-called perceived popular school, everybody will want to move near there, and now instead of competing at 2 kilometers, it may be 1 kilometer, 500 meters. So it doesn't really solve our problem. And I narrate this story. It's a true story. Somewhere in Boston, once upon a time, there was one particular school that nobody wanted to go because it was out far away from central Boston. So all the immigrants went there because it was far away. And after many years, the hardworking and talented immigrants all made a name for the school. It became the best performing school. And lo and behold, every endowed families started moving to that school. And today, that school is a very good school in Boston with a very well-heeled community around them. Have they solved the problem of diversifying the base? With all good intentions, it was defeated by human preferences. If we think that that's far-fetched, I suggest that also happens in Singapore.
Mr. Saktinandi Supat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to ask Minister regarding the student learning space that Minister shared earlier, and I think I laud the efforts by MOE to enhance, to push towards digitalization and edtech. My question is in regards to the access of this SLS that Minister mentioned everywhere and for the students to access it. My concern is as I go around to meet my residents, I see some of the students at home with their grandparents. Some are in broken families. My question is whether this is going to be, the SLS will be data intensive, and when it's data intensive, what type of extra help can we work together with other ministries to make sure that some of these students can be helped, especially in terms of data costs and access to this student learning space, which is exceptional going forward. So thank you, Minister.
Sorry. Chair, the short answer is that this is something that we have already done during the COVID times. During the COVID times, we did two things, which members may not be aware. First, when we distributed the devices to our schools and the students, for those who are unable or have difficulties with the data charges, we provided them with the free dongles for them to access the data. Second, for those who have difficulties with their home environment, which may be less than conducive, we continue to open our schools and allow the students to access the school services even at the depth of the COVID crisis. And we'll continue to provide such access to all students regardless of their financial background.
Ms. Denise Poh.
Thank you, Speaker. 3 points. Minister, I think the PSLE through train, no PSLE through train idea was not just a Workers' Party idea. Many of us are interested, and I know that the MOE staff have gone through even during Minister Heng's time, DPM Heng's time. So I'd like to MOE to consider maybe getting some of us involved in thinking through some of these constraints and considerations to see if indeed in Singapore there's no way that a through train school like this can happen. That's one. Second one is about MOE kindergartens or MKs. I know that when MOE first entered the space, it was to give access to the less advantaged or the disadvantaged preschoolers. That's one. Second is also to learn a little bit more about the space of early education, early childhood education, in terms of content, in terms of pedagogy and assessment. So I want to ask if what lessons has MOE learned from this MK initiative, and how can they be shared to ensure that those who have no access to these good MKs have a chance to also learn, and everybody can be uplifted in terms of early childhood, preschool, kindergarten education. That's my second question. My third one is, I know that as some of the members have mentioned, and Minister himself has mentioned, quite a number of employers are still fixated on the paper versus skills qualification as the proxy for promotions, for hiring. I know it's not easy, but I wonder if the public sector, being the biggest employer in Singapore, can show the way and lead the way. Are there some jobs, that are available or probably already being done already in the public sector that actually use skills-based instead of paper-based? I also know, for example, in education, some of the funding, for example, or in non-profit, some of the funding actually come
one of the conditions is that there must be some kind of paper qualification. So I wonder if we can comb through some of these and to ensure that the biggest employer in Singapore, the public sector, actually show and lead the rest of Singapore.
Chair, we thank Ms. Denise Poh for offering us your ideas and help to think through and step through some of those issues about the true train system that we talked about. But I just want to say this, short of doing that today, for a certain segment of our population, we essentially have already reduced the stresses and that are associated with school choice when they go secondary school. And that's through the DSA system, the direct school admission system, where they can use different abilities to get into different schools that specializes in different areas. But this is slightly from a different true train because it's not one-to-one. It's one based on merit through your specific skills. And the full subject-based banding will continue to expand this thing to reduce the stress, if stress is the concern. But as I mentioned, stress cannot be the only reason for us to think about this. It must be how we can better make use of the time for the holistic development of our children. So that's the first one. Second, Ms. Denise Poh asked about the MK lessons. I worked on this with EPM Heng Swee Keat when I was the MSF minister and he was the MOE minister then. We started MK for a couple of reasons. First, at that point in time, there was a plethora of pedagogies and practices across all our preschools. And we wanted to make sure that we have a body of knowledge that we can set as our baseline. And setting up the MK together with the National Institute of Early Childhood Education, NIEC, has been most instrumental in helping us to determine this baseline where we can share the best practices with the rest of the other preschool providers. The second very useful thing when we started MK was this. Now we have a better understanding and grasp of the cost drivers for any preschool education. And that allows us to determine the subsidies that we should be giving to the various preschools to make sure that the essentials are fulfilled and not frittered away on other things which are perhaps optional, perhaps frills. So that's the second. A third comment by Ms. Denise Poh, I will make sure that the Minister in charge of Public Service gets the message, and we will continue to do that.
It's Patrick Tay.
Minister, I would like to take your suggestion on earlier to invite us to suggest ideas where we can kind of do less and jettison. And also taking off from oral members, one results suggestion on lightening workload of teachers. One suggestion would be currently exams, I think a lot of teachers and educators, particularly in the primary schools and secondary schools, are very bogged down with setting exam scripts. And every year, year on year, trying to innovate and trying to find new ways to ask questions. And whether to lighten the load, can we do it at the cluster level for economies of scale so that you don't have to second guess the other school and trying to get other school papers and stuff like that, so that you also lighten the load of teachers by setting exams for subjects at cluster level. Thank you.
Chair, we thank Mr. Patrick Tay for your suggestion. Indeed, that's something that we have considered very seriously in MOE. And I will say a few things in response to that. First, we are all for sharing. In fact, I encourage all my educators to try to share their best practices. I have this, what I call 80-20 rule. For 80%, you can share, download the best practices from everywhere. But for every teacher, you must have 20% where you customize to the local needs of the students in your school. Because the learning profiles of students in different schools are quite different. So 80-20, 80% baseline, do as much as we can to share to lighten the workload. 20% you must customize. So that's first comment. A second comment that I would say is that yes, indeed, we appreciate your affirming of our teachers. When it comes to full subject-based banding, for the same subject, the teachers may have to set 3 different sets of paper because of the 3 different standards. So indeed, it is a lot of work. But I must say this, our teachers are not afraid of hard work. They just want the work to be meaningful so that they can help our students to grow and grow well. So that will do. The third thing I would caution in this idea is that while we try to harmonize the exam papers in region, as you say, we are careful not to turn this into a mini PSLE at different levels, at different regions, because then you have to coordinate everybody coming to take the paper at roughly the same time. So we are careful that, yes, to share, but I don't think the intent, and I don't think that's your suggestion, to turn it into a mini regional PSLE kind of system. So there will be some differentiation in the test matrix across the different schools to cater to the different needs. But indeed, we want our teachers to share more.
The one result.
So I thank MOE for assuring and cementing their support and commitment for the teachers and students' well-being. So Minister mentioned about the teacher growth model, and for anything to grow, we need space. So a suggestion, and I want to follow up on the suggestion by STU with regards to the white space for teachers. They would like a white space where they can do their things, their marking, their counseling for students. Because right now they do have space in between their lessons, but it's really for them to rest and to eat. So I was wondering if this could be part of MOE's consideration. And second, is regards to the flexible pathways for our IHL students. I'm glad that we have these flexible pathways for them. But at the same time, we know that being more flexible pathways and giving them extra modules to take means they need more time. Would the ministry be considering that they might need more time and they might need to finish the programs longer? And what is the implications for that? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, let me answer Dr. Wan Rizal's question with a more nuanced position. We agree that we want to give more white space to our teachers, but our definition of white space is a bit different. It's not so much for you to just rest and do counseling and do marking and do prepare lessons. That to us is part of work. It's not really white space. White space to MOE in the teachers' growth model means that intentionally setting aside time for teachers to develop their skills and competencies. They can go for teachers' work attachment, plus gain experience, exposures, networks beyond the school system, so that they can grow personally. And I've always said this to all my teachers. When I visit all the schools, I visit 1 or 2 schools every week, I don't have to look at the students first. I just need to look at the teachers. If the teachers are tired, the students will be tired. If the teachers have the sparkle in their eyes, the students will have the sparkle in their eyes. And that's why I keep saying, as our teachers pour their hearts out to take care of our children, it is our job to make sure that we take care of our teachers, respect them, give them time and space to grow. And when they grow, our children grow.
Mr. Don Wee, last question.
Thank you, Chair. One question. ITE West is situated in my constituency. So I have first-hand encounter on how these IT students organize activities for my Choa Chu Kang residents very well. And these students are supported by very caring IT lecturers who not only teach, but also care for them, as many of these students come from very disadvantaged families. So with the introduction of a higher NITEC since 2022, both the students and the lecturers have to grapple with additional demands. And I understood that each student has about 20 hours of classroom time every week, and each lecturer has to handle 40 students, which include the SEN ones. Therefore, can MOE actually consider giving ITE the flexibility to employ more teaching assistants to augment the lecturers? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I thank Mr. Don Wee for his question. It's always heartening when you hear members of the House asking for more resources for our teachers and expressing their full support and empathy for the challenges that our teachers experience, and even particularly for the ITE. We know the ITE do have students who are coming from challenging backgrounds, including SEN students. This is also in line with Mr. Wan Rizal's question earlier about the flexibility that we are giving our students in terms of the way they cope with the curriculum. We do want to offer that flexibility. We do want them to go through at their own pace, albeit looking at the structures we have in place, but certainly support will and continue to be given to all our students, as well as our lecturers and teachers. For the ITE, yes, Mr. Domi highlighted that we have the 3-year higher NITEC curriculum now. But we do acknowledge that some students may take a longer time and they may want to take a time off after 2 years, and they, as long as they've done their internship, they can leave ITE for a while, continue to work if they are ready to work, and come back and continue to stack up their modules and then complete their higher analytic and subsequently go on. So the diverse pathway is really about allowing the students to know where they are, understanding their family circumstances, and we will support them along the way. As regards the additional support, yes, given the additional challenges and learner profiles that our ITE has, we are working with the ITE to augment them with more resources. With regards to SEN, we are giving them more SEN-trained officers to help them, because we do want our SEN students who are from our mainstream schools to continue to move on to our institutes of higher learning. We are also at the ITE piloting what we call an integrated case management framework, where we will augment the ITEs with staff to help them coordinate services required, support services required by students with higher needs. We do know some of the students do come from very challenging backgrounds. Our lecturers, just like our Janet teachers, go on to their home visits, knock on the doors, find out where they are, and try to bring them back to school, because that's really the passion and the desire of our teachers to make sure that our students complete their education. So we are augmenting, I want to assure Mr. Don Wee that we are augmenting our ITEs with the resources required for them to support our students, and given the flexibilities that we are introducing, we will certainly work together with them to make sure that this will not unduly pressurize the teachers, but rather inspire them further that what they are doing is very much supported by members of the House, by the community, and certainly we will support them in every endeavor that they embark on in supporting our students. Thank you.
Minister Chan.
Chair, I promised Mr. Patrick Tay his Iron Man. Mr. Patrick Tay started with Iron Man. The other day at an environmental event for schools, I was also told that the MOE minister could be like Captain America, to save the world or change the world by shaping the next generation. Be it Iron Man or Captain America, we all have great expectations of the Ministry of Education, and perhaps also for the Minister for Education, to do wonders for the world. And some of you might have arrived at the conclusion that MOE is a very powerful ministry, as we do move property prices and determine traffic jams at the causeway. But on that day, I told the audience that I didn't aspire to be Captain America, or even Captain Singapore, as some drew a parallel to the initials of my name. I say, I'd rather be a Catalyst Singapore. Why? Why Catalyst Singapore? The difference between that is, the difference is this. The future cannot and will not be shaped by the superhuman capabilities of one man or woman. I don't think it can, nor should it be the case. I hope not. Instead, if MOE can catalyze and ignite the power of every Singaporean, we will be more powerful than any superhero. All Singaporeans can be given the opportunity to be superheroes. I hope those who can will also have the gumption to do so, where everyone defines success not by our achievements, but more importantly by our contributions, where we each understand our own strengths and weaknesses, even as superheroes, play as a team, win as a team, where those with great powers exercise greater responsibilities to help those with less, those who are little, and those who are lost, where we define success not by how well we do for ourselves in this generation, but more importantly, how we enable the next generation to do even better than us in this generation. So let me thank all the superheroes in our schools, our educators, parents, community, and industry partners. With your partnership, I fear not that we cannot let our next generation be the superheroes that they want and can be. And one final point, Mr. Chair. I understand that Parliament does not allow or encourage the display of any partisan symbols in this House. But I noticed that today, Speaker and one of our members have proudly displayed product placement on your chest. Some, like Mr. Speaker, will certainly say that for our education system, the best is yet to be. I say the rest also can be. Together, we move towards the better age and forge a better life. But we must always remember, lead with passion, serve with compassion. And finally, to DPM and Mr. Patrick Tay, especially for you, nothing without labor. Special thanks to our GPC chair. Thank you.
Mr. Patrick Tay, if you'd like to withdraw your amendment and end the class, please. Thank you.
Say Minister Maliki Osman, as well as Minister of State Huang, as well as the MOE team, our educators, teachers, staff, as well as the COS team for powering this entire, COS debate for MOE, and really sharing the plans. Now MOE is doing so much more from preschool to primary, secondary, beyond secondary, now even CET, so the 15 plus 50. And really, I think there's a lot of work to be done, and really, I will end off with my school's motto, Potes Pivot, if there's a will, there's a way. And on that note, thank you very much, and I beg leave to withdraw my amendment.
Is the honourable member given leave to withdraw the amendment? I think leave of the majority is given, the amendment is withdrawn. Despite the quip, I think we will pass the mean estimates and development estimates. The question is that a sum of $14,338,501,100 for head K stand part of the main estimates. As many as are of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is that a sum of $450 million for head K stand part of the development estimates. As many as are of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.